Today, we're diving into one of the most incredible stories in legal history. We're talking about a 25-year constitutional civil war that put a hugely powerful government head-to-head with a really determined judiciary. It was a conflict that would end up defining the very limits of power and the soul of Indian democracy itself.
So let's just start with a really big question. What happens when a government that was elected by the people, decides that the Constitution itself is kind of getting in the way? Can it use its power to just amend the rules, to change the entire game? This was the incredibly high-stakes question facing India for decades.
And this wasn't some academic exercise. This was a real-world epic tug-of-war between two of the most powerful institutions in the entire country: the Parliament, which represents the will of the people, and the Supreme Court, the sworn guardian of the Constitution.
To really get what's going on here, we have to rewind all the way to the beginning, to a dilemma that was baked right into India's founding document from day one.
Okay, so at the very heart of the Constitution, you've got this fascinating built-in tension. On one side, you have fundamental rights. These are things like your right to equality, freedom of speech, and really importantly for this story, the right to property. These are legally enforceable. You can actually go to court to protect them. But on the other side, you have the directive principles. These are more like aspirational goals for the country, things like reducing inequality and achieving social justice. So, see the problem? To achieve big societal goals, like, say, redistributing land to the poor, the government often had to step on the individual's right to property. It was basically a massive collision waiting to happen.
And that collision, believe me, wasn't a long time coming. The ink was barely dry on the Constitution before the first shots were fired in this constitutional war.
So, picture this. It's the early 1950s. Parliament, led by Prime Minister Nehru, is trying to push through these massive land reforms to break up the huge estates of powerful landlords, the zamindars. But the Supreme Court steps in and says, nope, you can't do that, striking the laws down because they violate the fundamental right to property. Well, Parliament's response was fast, and it was really clever. They just amended the Constitution itself, and they created something called the Ninth Schedule. Think of it like a legal lockbox. Any law they put inside the schedule was totally immune from being challenged in court.
Now here's the crucial part. In these early rounds, the Supreme Court actually agreed with Parliament. In a case called Shankari Prasad, the court basically said that Parliament's power to amend the Constitution was unlimited. It really looked like Parliament had won, hands down.
But then, 1967 rolls around, and the game completely changes. The Supreme Court decided it was time to draw a line in the sand, and it did so with a legal bombshell.
In what was a complete 180, the Supreme Court, in the Goloknath case, totally flipped its earlier decision. It declared that fundamental rights were sacred, sacrosanct, and completely beyond the power of Parliament to amend. Full stop.
So what you have now is a complete and total constitutional crisis. Parliament, which was supposed to be delivering on all these socialist promises, was now totally gridlocked by the courts. It couldn't pass any major social or economic reforms without the Supreme Court just striking them down. The whole system was at a standstill.
And stepping right into the stalemate is one of the most powerful, formidable figures in Indian history, Prime Minister Indira Gandhi. She saw the court as a huge obstacle to her agenda, and she was not going to let it stand in her way.
Indira Gandhi came out swinging. First, she tries to nationalize the country's biggest banks. Bam! Supreme Court strikes it down. Okay. Then she goes after the privy purses. These were massive tax-free payments that were guaranteed to India's old royal families. Bam! The Supreme Court blocks her again. Every single time she tried to push her populist agenda, the court shut her down.
So, frustrated, what does she do? She dissolves Parliament and calls a snap election in 1971. She runs on a simple, powerful slogan, Garibi Hatao, which means abolish poverty. And she basically asks the people to give her a clear mandate to get past these roadblocks. And they did. She came back to power with a staggering 352 seats, a massive 2/3 majority, more than enough to amend the Constitution any way she wanted.
And she did not waste a single second. Her government unleashed a legislative blitzkrieg designed to put the Supreme Court in its place. The 24th Amendment said, flat out, that Parliament could change any part of the Constitution, which was a direct shot at the Goloknath ruling. The 25th Amendment weakened the right to property, and the 26th finally got rid of those privy purses. The message couldn't have been clearer. Parliament, not the court, was supreme.
So with Parliament's aggressive counterattack, the stage is now set for the ultimate showdown, the final, epic confrontation, a legal battle that would truly define the future of Indian democracy.
And it all comes down to this one case of Ananda Bharti. The stakes here were just astronomical. The largest bench in Indian history, 13 judges, was put together. They listened to arguments for 68 straight days, the longest hearing ever. And the question in front of them was simple, but so profound. Is there any limit to Parliament's power to change the Constitution?